this border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
5 receivers at Duncan's disposal. Duncan stepping up. Hit! Ball is loose!
Big call here.
Marshall thinks they have it, and the Herd do!
Here's the kickoff from Amaretto Curry to the Hilltoppers, and we are underway, and a fake reverse on the kick return. And here comes Townsend down the left sideline. What a way to start it for Western Kentucky on the road, and it is an opening touchdown return, and just like that, the Hilltoppers strike first.
Justin Rohrwasser to try to win it for Marshall from 53 yards out. It's got the leg. It is good! And the perfect season continues for Justin Rohrwasser.
Goes for 2. Going for the win. Western Kentucky going for the victory. Rolling to his right, quick strike, and they did it! Western Kentucky has ended the perfect season into the hands of Willie McNeil. A shocker here in West Virginia, and it is over for Marshall. They end the regular season 11-1.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Trace joins me to relive a really interesting game against Appalachian State. The only thing you really get mad about, I guess, is that Marshall ended up losing the game, and some of the things that happened throughout the game will kind of anger you. But 31-30 is, it is what it is. It wasn't 63-30. It wasn't 63-7 or anything like that. I mean, Appalachian State was billed as a good team. They're a good team. They just are. So we'll talk about the Herd's trip down to Boone, North Carolina. We'll relive that game. We'll talk about it in depth a little bit, give you some stats, of course, and then we'll take us a little break. When we come back, we'll preview Marshall's conference opener now. The quote-unquote real season starts, Trace, and the Herd will be going to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to face Middle Tennessee, and we'll talk about that one too. But look, before we get into everything, let's I need to get better at doing this. Follow the podcast anywhere you follow podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, whatever. Go to the YouTube channel and make sure you follow that, because if you happen to miss an episode, that's where all the old ones will always be. Every episode is on the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast YouTube channel. But other than that, house cleaning out of the way, let's talk about App State. Herd went down, and marquee slot, really. Thursday night, quick turnaround from the loss against East Carolina. They really didn't have a lot of time to dwell on that loss that slipped away from them. And they're staring down a really tough Sun Belt team who has been, for all intents and purposes, the class of the Sun Belt since they joined the Sun Belt. Some other teams have risen to the occasion, but since they've been there, Appalachian State has been the best team in the Sun Belt. Coastal Carolina's making waves. Louisiana's making waves. Arkansas State has been up and down. They've kind of faded out a little bit. Troy has been there and kind of faded out a little bit. But through it all, Appalachian State has been the team in the Sun Belt. They're good. Former Southern Conference rival of Marshall. There's a lot of history there between those two teams. This is a game that a lot of people on both sides of the ball were looking forward to playing. And they got it on a Thursday night matchup, primetime slot. Big deal. All numbers of over 1 million people were, watching that game at any given time. So there were a lot of eyeballs on it. You could tell that people were interested. This game was going up against NFL game the Thursday night NFL game, and it still was drawing well. So Herd goes down to Boone. They play a tough game. They play a tough team. They come out, on the wrong side of the smallest of margins, like we said, 31-30. Herd takes the loss. I know you've got some stats and some points that are kind of alarming. I know one particularly that you are going to talk about, and and we haven't talked coming into this, but I know what you're going to say. And but look, let's talk about it before we get into any stats. I know you watched the game. Who didn't? What did you see?
Well, I saw a really good effort. I mean, that's first things first. I mean, the Herd had a really good effort in this one. I mean, when you go, that's a very tough place to play. I mean, they don't lose many home games there. Historically, they're extremely tough there. Historically, for the last quarter century beyond, Appalachian State's a good team, or an even great team most in a lot of cases. I mean, they just are. They're kind of like, I don't know. They're kind of like the Boise State of like the Group of Five on the East Coast type of thing. Like that's kind of what they are. Like they're for like the longest time, they're always good, and it doesn't really matter. And everybody knew this was going to be a tough game, and it was. And I mean, the fact is, it sucks. I mean, it sucks when you lose the game at one point. It sucks, no matter what there's no other way around it. It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth because it's the one. I mean, you lost the game by 1 point. And Marshall, I'm a Marshall fan clearly, but like I'm objective as well. Marshall had the better football team in my opinion, and they just let it slip. And they had a 2-score again, another not double digit, but a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. It was 30-21. You're up 2 scores, and you just blanket after that. I mean, that's 2 straight games that in the fourth quarters. Marshall in the last 2 games in the fourth quarter combined, they've been outscored 31-0. I mean, that can't happen. That you're not going to win a game when you're getting outscored 31-0 in 2 fourth quarters and back-to-back games. You're just not going to win. I mean, you can't blow a 17-point lead, and then a 9-point lead's not like that big, but like it's still 2 scores, and like you have a lot of talent offensively that you should be able to, add to the lead or what have you. Defense, could have made a couple more plays. But, I mean, I penciled this one in as a loss in the preseason, but, like, it wouldn't be as bad of a loss if it wasn't a 1-point loss. Like, and if they wouldn't have lost the game the week before or they just blew it. So there's a lot that, I mean, they have to figure out how to close out games. I mean, they're not going to – this Conference USA East division is wide open. And if they want to have a chance to win the division and play for the conference title or win the conference title, they're going to have to start finishing games, and it's got to start in the fourth quarter. And you can't afford to have another rocky game in Murfreesboro. You got to start out better. You can't lose 3 in a row.
No, I knew the first thing you were going to talk about was being outscored 31-0 the past 2 fourth quarters, because that's such an alarming stat. I mean, even if it was 31-10 or 31 to anything, you'd be like, well, at least they're showing signs of life late in games. Dude, 31-0 is, it's like, well, that's the very definition of not finishing, of not playing 60 minutes. That's exactly what that is. And right now, we'll talk about what do we know about Marshall after 4 games, but here's what I know. Like, I'm just going to jump right to that. Here's what I know. This team isn't built to take the foot off of the gas. If that's what they're going to do, we've seen them do it once or twice throughout a game. Like, like they stop pressing a little bit or stop running with tempo or whatever the case may be. And the tide turns on them and they don't recover. So if that's what you're going to be, then you better be that. And you better go down swinging doing that. Here's the thing. I agree with you as well. Marshall was the better team, in my opinion, in that game. They were. The stats I'm going to talk about, the yardage, all that's not going to back up that argument. But I think Marshall was the better team. So let's talk about those stats. Offensive output numbers are kind of mind-boggling. 566 yards of offense for Appalachian State, only 397 for the Herd. I mean, that's a big disparity. Time of possession, 33 minutes, 22 seconds for App State, 26 and a half basically for the Herd, plus 6.5 for Appalachian State. First downs will drop your jaw wide open. 39 first downs for Appalachian State, 20 for Marshall. Turnover margin 2-0. Marshall gets the edge in that. So right off the bat, people are going to go, well, there's why Marshall was in the game. It was 2-0 turnover margin. Well, you might be right. But I still think I watched the game. Like it's not like Marshall was just barely hanging on from getting blown out. It's like they were bending. They were doing a lot of bending. And there were some guys in some striped shirts that were helping them bend. All right, let's just call it what it is. Marshall was the victim of several terrible pass interference calls.
Agreed.
I'm not a guy who blames referees. I'm not a guy who blames the officiating because, Steven said it a lot, and I agree with this. Those things kind of tend to even themselves out through a duration of a game. What seems egregiously bad generally is not as egregiously bad. But, dude, I saw several egregious calls that really, truly cost Marshall. It really did.
One of App State's touchdowns was very questionable. I mean,
and that's another the touchdown review. That was an outstanding throw, outstanding quote unquote catch. You got to call it a catch because it was called a catch. But everybody initially thought, oh, he's out of bounds. Well, then you go back and you look at it, and you're like, okay, the back foot landed first. That's fine. But then you got to go back and look even further and say, well, did he have control? And I'm not sure that he had control. The announcers on the TV didn't think he had control either. But they called it a touchdown on the field. So that's probably why they stuck with the call. But what was surprising was the verbiage of the official, where he said that the call was confirmed or whatever, not just like upheld. It's like we got it right the first time, or they didn't lead you to believe that it was kind of inconsequential or inconclusive, but we have to go with what we called on the field. They were like dead set that it was a legit, this was 100% a catch. And I don't think anybody wearing Kelly green and white or a lot of America thought it would have so cut and dry. But on top of all those bad calls, the single worst maybe was the no call that was on Talik Keaton. He was absolutely tackled, basically.
Yeah.
And they kept the flag in their pocket. And that's deep in App State territory. That's going to set the herd up for a big drive or to, push a big drive further down towards the end zone. And they kept the flag in their pocket. And I'm thinking, okay, at this point, it's starting to get a little pathetic because these officials are throwing flags on balls that are sailing 10 yards out of bounds.
Yeah,
that
literally
nobody's going to catch. But you're not going to call a blatant pass interference on a guy that has an opportunity to catch a pass in the field of play. So what can you do? You can't blame the loss on the referees because, as you stated before, 31 points unanswered in the past 2 fourth quarters. It's not going to cut it. You cannot leave the game in the hands of the officials. You just can't do that. So all that being said, I still think this game is a game that should be played every year. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, just because you come out on the wrong side of it. Trace, is this not the type of team program that belongs with the peers surrounded by Marshall? They are who you want to be with, right? And I think they want to be with you too. You know what I mean?
This is what the conference should have done 9 years ago or whenever it was, instead of going after all these no name, no nothing, no offense teams that are in, these big, huge market areas and whatever. They should have went after these teams like App State, like, Troy, like, Georgia Southern. I mean, maybe to a lesser degree, but they should have went with these teams that actually have a built up like history and like a built up fan base, and like they just have a more established brand. And it just is so evident that playing Appalachian State's a whole lot different than playing FIU, FAU, Charlotte. I mean, it's just better. But the Conference USA just didn't want to go in that direction.
Well, and it's well documented. What they should have done was taken programs from college towns, not from big cities, because those teams don't get the support. Just because you're in a big city doesn't mean anybody cares.
No, they're
especially. And I'm going to use Charlotte as an example, and I know we pick on Charlotte a lot, and they're a program that's actually beginning to get it together a little bit. They're starting to make some progress here. But look, you're in a pro sports town, first of all. You're right smack dab in the middle of ACC country, and everybody in the state of North Carolina mostly is either going to cheer for UNC or Duke. I mean, it's just the way it's going to be. Even people in Raleigh have a hard time getting Wolfpack fans because everybody cheers for UNC and Duke, okay? If you're in Winston-Salem, nobody outside of there really is cheering for Wake Forest, right? And you want to bring in Charlotte because they're in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Go after Boone, North Carolina. They are the only game in town, just like Marshall's the only game in town in Huntington. So however it all falls out, I hope that, these decision makers, that these university presidents, athletic directors, whoever's making these choices, finally do something right and go, you know what, if we're going to survive, we've got to get games back to where our fans can travel to every weekend if they want to.
Yeah.
Other fans will travel to our city, and try to build what you have. You're never going to get a seat at the table, right? The big table, the SEC table. So you might as well choose survival and thrive with what you have.
Yeah.
So last note I'm going to make about this game is that, Trace, I think we might see that Marshall now has a legitimate problem with pass defense.
Sure does. Pass for a long time, really.
If it's been covered up a little bit by their ability to get to the quarterback, and they weren't able to get to the quarterback as effectively against Appalachian State, and we saw some problems with pass defense. I think I even tweeted during the game, I don't understand the strategy of, hey, we're not getting pressure. Maybe we shouldn't continually be given an 8-9 yard cushion.
Right.
Maybe we should bump that up to maybe 5 or 6 yards. You don't have to play man to man if you think your guy can't hang with a receiver off the line. Okay, fine. But let's cut that cushion in half. If you need 3rd and 6 and you got an 8 yard cushion, that don't make no sense to me at all. But, there are guys that get paid a lot of money to coach this stuff, and I just get paid nothing to talk about it on a podcast with you, which I kind of like. But
right.
So what do you think, Trace? What's the answer here defensively? What's the Herd going to have to do here? What is it? Because we're getting into the quote unquote pass happy Conference USA now.
Yeah.
And that's a weakness for the Herd. So what do you got to do? What do you do? If you're making decisions, what do you do?
I mean, good God, you can't just face guard and pray every time. I mean, that's all they do. Like that's the only tactic that they do defensively with the corners and their safeties is whenever it's a deep ball, they just face guard the receiver. They never turn their heads. They don't know where the ball is. It's just the dumbest philosophy ever. And it's been that way for so long for Marshall. I will never have never understood why it's like that. Yes, if I was to ask a defensive coordinator why, they're taught to do it that way, is they'll probably say so they don't lose a step or they don't lose, whatever. But I would rather lose a step and know where the ball is than not have a freaking clue where it is. And then you're going to get constant pass interferences because you're mugging the receivers and not even looking for the ball. It just makes no sense. And even in years past, when they would have a game, even when they had great defenses and, pretty solid guys back there in the back unit, there always is one game where they just look like they don't look like they've never played a position before. 2014 in Moonshine Throwdown. There was nothing. They couldn't do anything to stop those Western receivers. There's always, aside from tackling them, there's always that one game or two games, or in some cases more than that, every year where they just look hapless, just totally just lost. And I don't think it's just a Marshall thing. I think that's just how a lot of secondary players are taught now. But I just don't understand it. Where's the harm going to come in knowing where the ball is? Even if you might lose a step here or there, at least you're going to know where it is. You can make a better play on the ball and not get 100 pass interferences. So I'll take that to my grave. I just will never understand that philosophy.
Yeah, look, admittedly, I've never played defensive back. I've never been
of course not.
Defensive back coach. I don't know, but it seems to me like if I'm running step for step with a guy, or trying my damnedest to anyway, it's not against the rules for you to put your hands on him. Right. So, you always see a defender like with a forearm or something like touching a body part of another of the receiver to kind of know where he's at. Well, you think he's going to vanish all of a sudden if you turn your head? He's trying to catch a pass. He's not just going to dart on a 90-degree angle and be gone, right? Because, well, that ain't where the pass is. So I'm with you. Turn your head. If you know how they say quarterbacks have this clock in their head, like 1, 2, 3, I got to get rid of the ball. Yeah. Well, isn't that kind of, wouldn't you think that's similar for a defensive back? You'd be like, man, I've been running for 4 seconds here, 5 seconds here. Maybe I ought to be turning my head for a second. Or, hey, why are the receiver's eyes starting to look upward? Oh, the ball's probably coming in. Maybe I ought to turn my head. Anyway, I'm not here to, coach a position, because God knows I can't do that. But let's talk about some stats. Grant Wells, 18 to 33 on the day, 270 yards, 1 touchdown pass through the air, no interceptions for the first time this season. That was nice. I hated that I felt like it was almost always about to happen. I hate that that's the feeling I had. Every time there was a ball up in the air, a deep ball, or they were getting close to the red zone, I thought, God, is this the time it's going to happen? But luckily it never did. 73.5 QBR for Grant on the day. Rasheen Ali, 17 carries, 83 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown on the ground. Had a great game. I just don't think he got enough carries. No, he didn't. He's a superstar in the making. I think at this point we can say that he's a legit. Will the Herd offense morph into something that allows him to get more carries? I don't know, but he's a legit weapon. And I still think that the best 1-2 punch is not being utilized. I think App utilized a great 1-2 punch in their running backs, especially late in the game. But, Sheldon Evans is no slouch, but I still think we need to see a little bit more of, or any Knowledge McDaniel in the game somehow. Xavier Gaines, 5 catches, 104 yards, good for 20.8 yards per catch and 1 touchdown through the air. And it was a beauty. Man, what a beauty. If he could play Appalachian State every game, he might be All-American, because he just torches App State secondaries. Yeah. And I tweeted that during the game. He tweets, or he torches App State secondaries for a living. And man, he has. The past 2 years, he has just caught them with their pants down, so to speak. But that touchdown pass was a beautiful toss from Grant Wells. Great catch and run by Xavier Gaines. Shadid Ahmed, 4 catches, 81 yards, 20.3 yards per reception. Willie Johnson, Big Willie Styles, checking in, 2 catches, 50 yards. And here's where it gets a little concerning. Corey Gamage, Talik Keaton combined for 4 catches, 19 yards.
Yeah.
127 yards as a team. Again, no Knowledge McDaniel in the game. Second week in a row, I believe, for the Herd. And the play calls, I want to talk to you about this. Play calling in situational football, Trace. We'll talk about that in a second. What about these offensive numbers? Who stood out for you? What do you think we need to see more of moving forward as this team continues to evolve offensively?
Yeah, I think the offense played pretty well. Rasheen Ali is just an absolute star. This guy's special. He runs. Just the announcers were raving about him, and you watch some of those runs he made. Some of those cuts he made were nuts. Just stopping on a dime. That's kind of like prime Le'Veon Bell type stuff. Just awesome stuff. And Huff can't say enough things about him. Enough positives about him. And, I think that he absolutely could easily be a conference player of the year caliber player, maybe even by the end of this season or next season. He is special, and I want to see him get more carries. And like you said, I think that the maybe most appropriate 1-2 puncher running back isn't even, playing the second guy. So, Sheldon Evans is, like we said, he's been around for a while, and he demands a lot of respect in his own right, but I think he has morphed now more into a pass catching running back. More so, he doesn't really run in between the tackles nearly as much, or it doesn't seem like he has had as big of an impact running between the tackles this year as he did even last year, the year before. So that might be something they look at more, is to maybe get Evans more out of the backfield. And, it seems like he's really good at catching passes out of the backfield. So I'd like to see McDaniel get more carries, of course, or any carries. And I want to see Ali get more carries. So, because you can't, I know Huff said you just do what works. But, if a guy's throwing, a couple picks a game, or, missing guys high and missing passes, and that's not really working the greatest at all times. So, maybe you could run the ball a little bit more. And it's obvious they can do it. And, situational football, would have liked to have seen a little more ground game the last 2 games in the fourth quarter. So I'll save that a little bit for later. But yeah, it was solid enough, but they needed to be better.
Here's what I'm thinking. from what I've seen from week 1 till through the end of the App State game for the Herd, is that when Grant Wells drops the pass and Corey Gamage is on the field, he is target one. Eyes go right there. And if sometimes he tries to force it in there, and that's why we've seen some interceptions thrown. And it's like he just locks on to Gamage, and Gamage is very talented. He really is, but he's starting to be over-targeted, I believe, so that his production isn't as explosive. And we see now that Keaton and Gamage combined for 4 catches and 19 yards against App State, and that's not something that's going to win you a lot of ball games, especially when you got guys like Shadid Ahmed going 20 yards a catch, Xavier Gaines going 20 yards a catch. You know, there are more weapons here. So, you know, maybe personnel needs to be mixed up a little bit more so that I didn't really think I would be talking about Gamage, you know, not being in as many pass packages as he is, but he's just becoming like this tractor beam to where all the passes are getting sucked into. Yeah. And it's hindering Marshall's explosiveness because Gamage is for all the things he does great. Here's the past couple of games, it's been like 7 yards, 6 yards. You know, it's not that big 30, 40 yard bomb or whatever. And you're seeing guys like Ahmed get those. You're seeing Gaines get that. You see Willie Johnson getting that. So let's spread it around a little bit more because there are other guys that can do things for you. The last thing you need to see is a guy built like Corey Gamage turn into a possession receiver. Holy moly. That would be an extreme shame. So that's just something I've noticed, you know, this game in particularly is that other guys were stepping up. So let's continue to let them keep a hot hand. Let's find them more in the offense. Now, before you get into grades, let's talk about play calls in this situational football. And what I mean by that is we saw late in the game that Marshall was going to go for it on 4th down. You know, it's like, but it was a 3rd down call, and we knew Marshall was going to go for it on 4th down. We knew. And what happened? On 3rd down, they chuck it deep, like bomb type deep. And I'm like, man, what's going on here? That kind of sets you up for failure. You know, like if you know you're going to you need 8 yards and 2 downs. I don't remember what it was, but let's say you need, 10. Let's say you need 10 yards and you're going to take 2 downs to get there. Man, why are you going to throw a 40-yard pass that probably isn't going to be caught when you can just as easily find somebody for 6 or 7 yards when your running back can probably get you 3 or 4 yards? So play calling in situational football was sketchy, I guess you could say, for me in this game. You know, I can't blame a loss on it, but it's just something I thought we would see better. What do you have thoughts wise? I know you were a little vocal. You know, we have a private group chat and everything we talk about. You were a little vocal. I'm not saying you were naming names or cursing or anything like that, but you had made some points about play calling in this game. What do you see it? What's it trending for you? And I don't mean upward or downward, but like what's the trend for you? Where do you not liking that you're seeing?
Well, I mean, I don't like the fact that when you're up 2 possessions in the 4th quarter, you're not letting the play clock even get under 20 and you're snapping the ball and you're throwing it every down. I don't like that. I mean, I understand like that's what the offense is supposed to be centered around is the tempo and everything, but you have to do it. You got to be a little smarter with it. I mean, yeah, if you're up, and it would be one thing if they kept that going and they weren't able to run the ball. They are able to run the ball. Like they were running the ball really well against App State. And when you're up 2 scores in the 4th quarter, yeah, you can't just sit on the lead, but you got to run the ball a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying go to, you know, dock ball or anything, but like you have to calm it down a little bit. You can't be, you know, throwing it every down and snapping the ball and, you know, before the play clock gets under 20. I mean, you got to let some time run off. I mean, you got to, and when you're going that fast constantly, essentially, that's going to put the defense out there more. And the defense is going to be gassed and winded, which is another thing for another day. But you don't have to just mail it in by, I mean, running the ball up 2 possessions or 3 possessions in the fourth quarter isn't mailing it in or sitting on the lead. That's just smart football. And I mean, I'm not saying don't still do some of the tempo and some of the passing, but you can't do it as often as you're doing it in the fourth quarter, in my opinion. And I mean, it's going to benefit the whole team if they start to run the ball more in the fourth quarter and just, I mean, yes, you have to try to run some of the clock out too. I mean, I know that gets viewed negatively by a lot of people by saying you're just kind of, sitting on the lead or trying to just play it really safe. But sometimes that's just the smartest thing to do. And I think they have to start doing more of it.
Well, you make a good point when you say you don't let the play clock run down. You can still run your offense. You just don't race up to the line and snap it in 10 seconds. Right. And look, you have several really good running backs and you have a really good offensive line. I don't care if everybody and their brother knows you're getting ready to line up and run the football. I still like your chances in doing it. Right. I mean, if they got 8 in the box, all right, well, maybe you throw a little bubble screen out to the wide receiver or something, but it's still going to go down as a run type play. The clock's still going to run, all that kind of stuff. But by not letting the play clock run down, you are literally leaving time on the clock for the opponent. You just are. You think about that, 20 seconds of play, every 3 plays, that's an extra minute of game time for your opposition.
In one series.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Every 3 plays. You just gotta. The evolution of this offense is going to have to continue to find that happy balance. They don't have a problem coming out of tempo at some odd point in the game to take their own selves out of a rhythm. Yeah. So why can't you do that when you need to? You said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. 31 points to 0 points in the last 2 fourth quarters tells you what you're doing in the fourth quarter is not working.
No,
that there's no other indicator you need to look at. It is not working. So 0-2 in those subsequent 2 games as well also tells you what you're doing in the fourth quarter is not working. So figure something else out and find a happier balance. Defensively, Trace, lots of guys had some good games for the Herd. Abraham Beauplan leading the way, 13 tackles, 8 solo, 1 tackle for loss. Eli Neal, 12 tackles, 6 solo, 1 quarterback hurry. E.J. Jackson and Najee Johnson, both 8 tackles apiece. Jackson, 7 solo, Johnson, 3 solo. Impact plays for the Herd were fair. Only 1 sack as a team, which is surprising. 6 tackles for loss, though, 3 quarterback hurries, 5 passes defended, 1 forced fumble and a fumble recovery, as well as 1 interception, which I've got to give props to Micah Abraham. They were trying to pick on him, and to a certain degree, they were. It was kind of a mirror image of what they were doing to Stephen Gilmore the year before. He was getting picked on, flagged, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, bang, he gets the big interception to turn the tide and get a big bounce-back play. So good for Micah Abraham for bouncing back and just not taking it and not allowing them to pick on him all game long. But look, impact plays weren't there in the way they needed to be there for Marshall. A few more sacks on the day, probably would have been huge. But defensively, it wasn't that bad. 31 points is, you don't want to see, that's going to lose you a fair amount of games, but still. They gave up a lot of yards, 566 yards. But what are you going to do? The 39 first downs kind of scares you a little bit, doesn't it? Woo! I didn't know that until I started looking at it. But look, it's not too bad. We'll go into special teams. Rasheen Ali had the big play, obviously. 97-yard kick return for touchdown in a beauty fake return or a fake reverse. That thing was gorgeous. I don't think anybody touched him at all. Now, Corey McCoy is having a really quiet, good year for Marshall. The transfer from McNeese State averaged 29.5 yards on kickoffs as well in this game. Shane Chucci coming in and field goal kicking duties, had a good game. Look, man, a lot of people are going to point to that missed field goal. I don't blame him for that. I really don't. He went 3 of 4 in action kicking field goals for the Herd this season. He set a career long of 46. It was perfect on extra points. I mean, college kickers are college kickers, man. The dude hit 3 of 4. If you don't want to put him in a position to have to kick a field goal for you, then score a freaking touchdown.
Do more.
Robert Lefevre had a big 61-yard punt on the day. The average was 39 yards overall on 4 kicks, but I'm sure some of that was situational and, down and distance type stuff. So, Trace, let's go right into grades. What do you got for a quarterback, Grant Wells, against Appalachian State?
I gave Grant Wells a B+ in this game. I thought he played pretty well. Solid game. 18 to 33 is not bad. 270 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions or no fumbles. That's the first, like I said, it's a huge thing for him because every game this year he had at least 1 pick. So you like to see that. The first couple series he really struggled. I mean, early, the first couple series of the game, but after that he really got in a nice rhythm. I mean, that throw to Xavier Gaines was an absolute just piece of work. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, just a beautiful ball. And, really nice touch on it. And he made some nice plays. And he runs he runs tempo well. I mean, he's comfortable in that type of element, and it shows. But sometimes, he does have a few. His problem is throwing passes high. That's his problem. Yeah. And if he can figure that out, he's going to be hard to stop. But if he can, the tempo helps him a lot. He needs to work on a little bit about his touch too, because sometimes he just throws like 7-yard passes 300 miles an hour, and it's like that kind of leads to a couple errant balls and tip balls and picks and that kind of thing. But he had a good game, and you like to see the no turnovers, and would like to see that continue. So B+.
Yeah, it's a solid grade. Look, we're what are we now, like 15-ish games into the Grant Wells era?
Yeah.
It's time for some of those, he's just a freshman type things to go away. He's had a lot of football under his belt now. The progression really needs to start to trend positively, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of good things happen week in and week out. You're right. He does run tempo really well. The big thing for me is I think now at this point, I'm not ready to stamp it as like being a bona fide truth, but 50-50 balls are just not his thing. They're just not. His guy rarely has a legitimate chance to be the only guy to catch the ball.
No.
It's either really high to where nobody catches it, or defenders have just as good of chance of catching it as his receiver does.
Yeah.
He seems to be really good passing down the seams. If somebody's wide open, he does a good job of hitting that person. It's just those sideline throws, fade routes, stuff like that aren't his forte. No. So if Marshall can figure out how to work the seams a little bit more and get guys open down the middle of the field, I think they could really make some damage in Conference USA. But if you're going to rely on Grant to give you the sideline 50-50 ball, deep bomb ball, I'm not sure that's it's just one of those things. He's just not that great at it. Maybe he'll get better. But he's doing well. He's doing a lot better. He's more consistent. Few throws get down throughout the course of a game, and Marshall's making bigger plays. It is what it is. Offensively as a whole, 397 yards for the Herd. They get 30 points, which will win you a lot of games in Conference USA. Stephen pounds that drum to no end, and he's right. 30 points will win you a lot of games, especially if you've got a decent defense, which Marshall does. But still, we've seen the offensive numbers decline now for the past 2 weeks. What do you got for the offense?
Yeah, I give the offense a B. I mean, it was a pretty good day. Like you said, 30 points, although 7 of those were from special teams, so really only 23 points offensively. 397 total yards is a lot lower than they had been getting, but, I mean, App State's not NC Central or Navy. So, I mean, of course, it's going to be harder. 270 passing, 127 rushing. I just would have liked to have seen the rushing attempts up, and that number would have been a lot better. 5 of 13 on third downs. That's not great. 8 penalties, not very good there. I mean, not all those are on offense, but a lot of them were offensively. About -7 in time of possession. That's a problem. I mean, that goes back to the tempo that they run offensively. It's so fast. Even if you're stalling out and you're having to punt, or whether you're scoring, that's putting the defense out on the field a lot. And you're not. I mean, the defense isn't going to hold teams. A defense can't shut a team down if they're on the field for 35 to 40 minutes a game. It's just not going to happen. And they've had a problem. They have had a problem with that this year, and I think that has to be addressed moving forward as far as when they use tempo and how much they use it. Offense also had no turnovers, which you like to see. But unfortunately, a couple drives early in the game when they got inside the 20, inside the 10, they had to settle for field goals. That's another big reason why they lost. They just stalled out in the red zone a couple times. You don't like, that's not a good sign. So offense did good things, but it should have been even better things than what they ended up doing. So I'll give them a B.
Yeah, it's frustrating to know that you left some points on the board or potentially left points on the board. And I'm not talking about the missed field goal. You left points off the board by stalling in the red zone. And, Marshall's been really, really, really good at moving between the 20s. And then they've scored a lot of points, in the red zone as well. But you've just, in games against good teams, you can't settle for 3. How many times a year when we're doing a preview do we say that same thing? Or we say, that's what Marshall needs to do is force field goal attempts instead of touchdowns, because that'll win you a game. But not a bad grade. Defensively, look, no lead in here. What do you got for the defense?
I give defense a C+. I mean, it was it's a decent day. I mean, decent. I think you can give it that. They gave up 31 points, but I mean, on the field a lot. 566 total yards. That's a lot there. Ironically, this is some balance right here. App State had 283 passing and rushing. I mean, that's some balance. And I thought Marshall did a great job against Cameron Peoples. I mean, the announcers were talking him up like he was Derrick Henry or something. And I'm just like, this guy's got 25 carries for like 3.5 yards an average. Like, what are you seeing that I'm not? Yeah, he's big, but Marshall wasn't letting him get away. It was Noel that they couldn't stop. He's the one that absolutely torched him on the ground. Defense also was +2 in turnovers, which was good to see. They did a good job on third down. Only 4 of 12 on third down they allowed, which is good, but only 1 sack. Marshall, that's their bread and butter defensively, is getting the quarterback. They were not able to, unfortunately. App State's got a really good O-line, and Marshall just couldn't quite penetrate it enough. 6 TFLs, 5 quarterback hurries, but unfortunately on the field too long. And Huff said afterwards, and it's true, they had a lot of missed tackles. A
ton. Yeah.
That's the last 2 games. They've missed a lot of tackles, and you cannot have that, especially against an offense that has as many weapons as App State has. You just can't have it. And, I would have liked to have seen a few different schematic things from the defense and some coaching things from the, differences there, which I'll say that for later. But defense they were decent. I mean, they weren't the reason they lost the game by no means, but, they could have played a whole lot better as well. So I'll give them a C+.
Yeah, if you look at the stats and you're like, wow, 560 some yards, they were on the field 6.5 more minutes, and they gave up twice as many first downs as their offense gained. I mean, it looks pretty daunting. And then you circle all that and you go, well, there's only 31 points and we scored 30. So they're very much a weather the storm type team right now. And if they could get any, the tempo, I think is becoming a deterrent. As fun as it is to watch, it's becoming a deterrent late in games. And I don't know the answer to that, because there are a ton of teams that do run tempo who don't give up a shit ton of yards but this is what we're seeing for the Herd. Individually, I think some guys had great games. The linebacking core had great effort today. What we saw is a lot of missed tackles where we wanted to hit and not wrap up. And that's fundamental stuff, man. You're playing good teams that have good players. You have to be fundamentally sound, and it's not about getting the big hit. It's not about that. The first guy's got to be the guy who's willing to get drug around for a yard or two until his buddies can come in there and lay the big hit. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were right. They Cam Peoples, great back, but the Herd put him out. The Herd put him out of the game, and the App State brought in Noel, and well, he did some work. I mean, he's a speedy little somebody, and he did work on the Herd. But C+ is fair. Special teams, though, Trace, it's for the 3rd time in 4 games. The special teams has been great. We've seen them scoring and doing things that we haven't seen from Herd special teams units in a lot of years. especially all of these things at the same time. Kickoff returns for a touchdown. Now we've seen blocked punts, blocked kicks, block this, block that. I mean, excellent kick return yardage. Really pretty solid field goal work as well. Kicking duties were really good. What do you got for the special teams?
Yeah, I thought this was the overall best special teams performance of the year. I gave them an A-. I thought they were really good. Definitely, I think the best they've done overall this year. 3 of 4 on field goals is pretty daggone impressive, especially since Chuchi hadn't even kicked this year. And that was good. Now, the last kick that he missed, that's the only reason I gave it an A-. But, I mean, it's not – at that point, Marshall, that they needed to do more to be in a better situation at that point to where that field goal miss shouldn't have even mattered. But, unfortunately, it did because they didn't do enough before that. But, I mean, you do have to take that into consideration. It was a miss, and it was a fairly easy kick. 3 of 3 on extra points. 4 punts, like you said, 4 punts, 39-yard average. That's not bad. Kick returns were really good. 34.4 yards per return for everybody on the team. And, of course, the Rasheen Ali, just magnificent kick return. I mean, even watching it, I thought he handed it off. Like, I really did. I bit Bill on that hook, line, and sinker. And that was an absolutely awesome call from Huff. He dialed that one up perfectly. That's probably the one time – that might be the only time we see that play all year. That might have been a one-time shot just because now teams are going to, maybe think they're going to prepare for it now. But if that is a one-time shot, my gosh, they made it count. Special teams are really good in this game. Would have liked to have seen that last field goal go in, but even at that, it wouldn't have guaranteed anything. So I'll give them an A-.
Yeah, the missed field goals are getting magnified because it's basically the same song and dance the last 2 games. Opposition scores a touchdown, Herd misses a field goal, opposition goes down and wins the game.
Yeah,
and it's unfair. It's the kid, you trotted him out there and he kicked you 4 field field goal attempts and he hit 3 of them. He hit his first 3, including a career long that nobody thought he had the leg for.
Right.
And so let me ask you the tough question though. In your eyes, in your opinion, and for what you hope to see moving forward, did Shane Chuchi supplant himself as the field goal kicker for Marshall?
100%.
I mean, we weren't there in preseason. We didn't see how the whole thing played out, but, the incumbent kicker getting dethroned for a different kicker is kind of an off-the-wall kind of thing. It usually doesn't happen that way. So, I think a lot of Herd fans were comfortable with what they had with Chuchi last year, and we're looking forward to having him back this year. So you think it's now his job and not one more – we're not in a scenario now to where we're going to see kickers getting flip-flopped every miss, are we?
I doubt it. I mean,
that is terrible.
No, you can't. And you can't build any confidence. You can't give a kicker any confidence doing that. I mean,
yeah, but that's what we just saw. We saw Sanders miss the kick against East Carolina, and boom, who trots out there for the first field goal against App State is Chuchi.
Well, he did. So, he had been missing before that too, Sanders. So it wasn't only East Carolina, but I think he's much better kickoff guy. I mean, I'm so thrilled that they actually have a kickoff guy that knows what he's doing now because that's a big deal. I mean, it's
52 yards wide. You should be able to land the ball somewhere in that 52 yards of width.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're good.
Deep.
That's true. Coaching. Well, okay. Coaching. Give it to me straight.
Yeah, I gave him a B-. I mean, there was a lot that they did right, but there was a 2 or 3 things that I didn't like. Just to be perfectly honest. The start was a little concerning. I mean, the offense, the first offensive series gained a net of 0 yards, and then App State absolutely did whatever they wanted on the next drive and scored a touchdown. So I was like, that's not looking good. This could be bad. But, of course, they turned it around after that. The offense got going, after the slow start. They really had App State on their heels a lot in this game. I mean, offense, and they should have scored a lot more than they did. Let's be honest. They left a lot of points out there. But the fourth quarter woes that has to stop. They didn't have any turnovers, which is good. The coverage was soft a lot. I mean, how many defensive coordinators is Marshall going to go through to where they actually or man up against against receivers. They're always giving cushion, always. Like, I know it's not not all the time, but way too much. They are giving just too big of a cushion. And it doesn't make any sense, because I noticed a few times where it's like, you're only rushing, I know in this game, you're only rushing 3 guys and you're given this big cushion. Like, what the heck kind of sense does that make? I mean, of course they're going to complete passes when you're only rushing 3, he's going to have all day to throw, and you're dropping 8 back and you're given 10-yard cushions. Of course they're going to complete passes. I mean, I just didn't understand that. And I know you said something about, similar to that, and you tweeted about it and stuff, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't like that. Offense, like, if there's ever such a thing as the offense was going too fast too often, this was it. I mean, that you gotta situationally, you have to realize if you have a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, you gotta try to run the ball a little bit more. We said this earlier. It can't be snap the ball at 22 seconds on the play clock, throw it here, snap it again, 21 seconds, throw it here, throw it there. I mean, you can't. That's even, and then if it's incomplete passes, then that's saving even more time. So, I mean, you're giving a team multiple minutes in the fourth quarter just because you're not slowing it down a little bit more often than that. And, I mean, it's not like Rasheen Ali's a scrub. He's an absolute star. And, this could have been a game where he had 25 carries for 110 yards or something like that. Like, he easily could have been that or better if he would have got enough carries. And if he would have had more carries in the fourth quarter, then they probably would have won the game. So it's disappointing there. I mean, I love the tempo and how it's opened up the offense. Like, it's done great stuff for the offense, but it can't just be that. And I'd like to see that change moving forward. So I'm going to give him a B-. But there was one thing that was really good, and that was that kick return touchdown call that Huff dialed up. That was awesome. I mean, that right there is really the only reason I gave it as high as I did. So I'll give it a B-.
Yeah, but I mean, B- in a loss. I don't think, you've said yourself, it doesn't get much higher than that when you lose a game. But I think I think a lot of people are now looking at Marshall thinking, okay, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. And maybe you're right. They're still trying to learn who they are too.
Jury's out.
Yeah, the jury is definitely out, but I don't think they did a bad job. They went on a short week and had to prepare for a hostile environment against a really good team in a marquee time slot. Okay. And inevitably there were guys that were dinged up from the East Carolina game, and they had to push through it and play without that extra day or two of recovery. So all that stuff factored in, they still only lost by the slimmest of margins. It was right there. I mean, it was right there. If
should have won.
And they still should have won. And I'm not going to say like, well, I'm not going to give you a myriad of excuses, because excuses are excuses, but
right.
Let's also remember that this coaching staff is learning. Huff is a first-year head coach. Mm-hmm. You're going to take growing pain. Now, the next time this scenario comes around in his coaching career, he probably doesn't play it the same, because he's learned. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try something a little bit different. Maybe I need to slow it down, to a 2/3 tempo instead of a full-on, so I can save a few seconds here, a few seconds there, or burn off a few seconds here and a few seconds there. I mean, so now maybe Appalachian State, instead of being able to kick a 45-yard field goal, well, shit, they have to try to kick a 55-yard field goal because they just don't have enough time. Right. Who knows, but that's the evolution of a coaching staff. People forget that, they all want to look back and be like, well, this is why we never should have got rid of Doc Holliday. Can you recall Doc Holliday's first year at Marshall? I mean, I can't recall it, but I do know that it was filled with some first-year head-scratching coach decisions. Right?
He made those in year 11.
I wasn't going to say that. But
deal.
I mean, you've got to learn. These guys are learning. They know a ton of football, but they're still learning on the fly as well. So Marshall's not as bad as a lot of people probably think they are. They're still a really good team. I bet nobody in conference wants to play him.
Marshall
Who wants to play him?
Period. Marshall really is a 4-0 team. They just beat themselves.
So they have every opportunity to go down right now and rip off wins all the way up until 75 week, until UAB comes to town. I mean, they should be favored in every game they play up until 75
maybe
week.
FAU, UAB, something like that.
Yeah, November. We talked about November being the gauntlet. So they should be favored for the remainder of this schedule up until the gauntlet starts in November. And if they rip off 5 wins in a row or whatever, are people still going to be like, this Marshall team's really not that good? These short-minded fans are going to be like, man, they really turned it around. Like, no, man, it's the same team. They just had to figure out a little bit more of who they were. All right, look, this freaking recap is stretching on for almost an hour. Overall, what do you got for the Herd?
Yeah, overall gave him a B-. I mean, it was a good effort. It was a good effort. Like, it's a really good team on the road, hostile environment, national TV, night game. All the hyperbole, whatever, all this stuff. Like, they played a pretty good game. I mean, you would have liked to have seen the offense finish a couple drives. You would have liked to have seen anything in the fourth quarter from the offense, point wise. You can't make any bones about that. You cannot put up goose eggs in the fourth quarter. You can't. Yeah. I mean, 21-0 in the fourth quarter to ECU, 10-0 in the fourth quarter to App State. You got to do something. Defense, they got to shore up the tackling a little bit. That's 2 straight games where they've missed a lot of tackles, and I'm not too worried about that. And I think if the offense can start managing the tempo a little better, then that will help the defense out tremendously, because a lot of those missed tackles are probably credited to the fact that they're just gassed and they're on the field a lot. And they're playing a tough offense that's got a lot of good players that runs the ball well. A lot of different things going on there. So defense, I think they'll get it figured out. Secondary, I don't know if they will or not. It just depends on how many teams want to throw the ball deep on them, and how, you just can't keep getting these egregious pass interferences. Although a couple of them were horrible calls. There's just such bad officiating in so many instances in this game. But I think the defense will be fine. The offense has to help out the defense, though. It has to, period. It just has to help them out, especially when it's a tight game in the fourth quarter. So overall, give them a B-.
It's not bad. What do you know, or what do we know about the Herd now that the out-of-conference is over? They come out of it as a 500 ball club. I think most people had them at 2-2 anyway. Those same people that are angry that they're 2-2 had them at 2-2. So what do we know about the Herd?
Well, I think we know that there has to be some things changed. I mean, you're not going to shy away from what you do offensively totally. I mean, you can't. That's why they've had the success they've had so far offensively. But from through the season, mid-season, early season, late season, whatever, like, teams make changes when they have to. I mean, you think Clemson's got right now is going to stay the same right now? They can't do anything offensively. Clemson's got 2 losses right now in September for the first time in like 7 years. I mean, you think Clemson's not going to change some stuff? Everybody is. It doesn't matter who you are. Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, whether you're Marshall, whether you're East Carolina, whatever. Like, teams make changes throughout the season, and Marshall's going to have to do that, because if they keep doing what they're doing right now, not showing up in the fourth quarter, not helping out, not helping your case out in the fourth quarter, putting up goose eggs, getting outscored, shut out in the fourth quarters. If the defense is out there too long, if they're gassed, Marshall's not gonna succeed. Marshall's not gonna succeed in the way they need to succeed. So they're gonna have to make changes. And it's like you said, it's a new coaching staff. Everything's different, and they've played 4 games now. I mean, that's 1/3 of the regular season. So they have to start kicking it into high gear, because you can't stay the same right now. I mean, there's things that have to be changed, or else Marshall's not going to play for a championship this year. So that's what I know. They have to change a few things.
Yeah, change is inevitable. Basically, the only constant in life is change, and this football team is no different. I think if I'm Charles Huff, and I know they do a good job of evaluating their roster and making sure that the best players play, and we're seeing a lot of guys rise to the occasion. But I think tendencies are what needs to change. I mentioned that earlier. Grant Wells drops back to pass. He immediately looks to see where Core Gamage is, unless the play is not designed for him. If he's an option, he's like option 1. And the tendency to do that is one of those things that needs changed. That's what needs worked on, because you see guys like Shadid Ahmed streaking down the sideline. Well, you got to hit him. You know, you can't settle for a 7-yard quick throw to Gamage when Ahmed's blown his dude out of the water and he's 40 yards downfield, like doing cartwheels and backflips to get the ball. Xavier Gaines is another guy that's got to be more heavily involved. We beat that drum for weeks, and they finally included him in the offense, and look what happens.
Throw the ball to Xavier M. Gaines. For the love of God, throw him the ball. Like, you don't know how many times I screamed that during this game. I mean, it makes no sense. No.
Xavier M. and Gaines. I love that.
I mean, good Lord.
So you're getting a learning curve in a number of different areas. You know, tendencies need to be worked upon. The coaches are learning from mistakes. The team is still trying to figure out its identity. They know who they want to be. They're just not sure what they are right now and if they can be that. So it's a continual work in progress. Last thing I'm going to say before the break is shout out to Alex Millette, because that dude is an absolute monster.
Yeah.
The replay of that Rasheen Ali touchdown, if you could give half a touchdown to someone, give it to Millette, because he drove a pile 7-8 yards, it seemed like, into the end zone. And I don't know, did he recover a fumble or something? Because on the ESPN app and the stat breakdown, he appears in the rushing column. 0 attempts for 4 yards. So he magically tallied 4 yards without getting an attempt. So I hear you, Mr. Millette. No, he had a great game. I love the play, him just driving the pile, driving Ali into the end zone. That was great. I love those guys. The last thing I'll say is, yes, we all saw the tweets floating around post-game of Appalachian State's fans doing, you know, saying things and this, that, and the other. And we all know that is not, quote, what App State fans are. We get that. Those jackaloons are in every fan base across the country. Marshall's got them too. But that's what in this world, if that's what gets a spotlight put on it, dude, there are national talking heads talking about it. Kirk Herbstreit saw that.
Yeah.
You know, he said something about it. So if you can't just let it go unchecked, I'm not saying what the university should do. They shouldn't punish these guys, or they should punish whatever, but you can't let it go on. At this point, everybody knows that it's happening. They saw it. So you have an obligation to do something about it. You know, whether or not it bothers the players, then that's another thing. I doubt that it does. I doubt any of those guys are losing any sleep over what some 150-pound half-drunk idiot has to say after a ball game. But still, it's a bad look for your university. You know, you're supposed to be a classier joint than that. And, you know, you just anything, even if the coach, you know, tweets a video of himself saying like, hey, we saw what happened and, you know, we're not cool with that. Then just do that. Just say, hey, that's not who we are as App State fans. Y'all got to be better. You know, set an expectation. You can still be rowdy and raucous and have a good time and talk a little crap and stir the pot and all that. I mean, hell, we do that, but I'm not like personally attacking anybody.
You got to be classier.
You got to be better. Just be better. Be better at that. Anyway, on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about Marshall's trip to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to face the Raiders. Already 1-3 on the season, Trace. Off to a great start. Conference USA East is up for grabs for anybody except the Raiders. We'll be back. It's Moonshine Throwdown Podcast.
Michael Hughes to kick. Rasheen Ali, the deep man, receives it at his own 2. They look to set up the reverse. They fake it. Ali's headed down the sidelines. And Rasheen Ali is going to return this kick 98 yards for the touchdown. And when I say he was untouched, I don't even think he got a sneeze from an Appalachian State defender. They set up the end around perfectly. Defense bought. Ali took it. And what a turn of events for Marshall. What a great answer.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast. It's Conference USA slate time, Trace. The Herd is opening the Conference USA portion of its schedule with a trip to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to play the Blue Raiders. or the Raiders? Are they the Blue Raiders anymore, or are they just the Raiders? It really
I
doesn't
think
matter.
they still are.
Okay. Well, whatever. I'm sure it'll be a gray out at whatever. Oh, man, I forget. Johnny Red. Is it Johnny Floyd? Johnny Floyd? Johnny Floyd Red, some kind of Floyd, whatever. I'm sure it'll be a gray out. The bleachers will be sparse and, you know, mostly empty, just like every time they go to Murfreesboro, especially with the Raiders being 1-3. Although, for some reason, the Herd always has trouble playing in Murfreesboro. Anyway, game's going down October the 2nd at 7 p.m. Power Index loves the Herd in a road game, Trey. 60.6% chance to win. Herd saw today the line came out -12. Okay. I still think they're probably better than a 2-touchdown favorite, but hey, take the 12, right? This will be the 11th all-time meeting between the Herd and the Blue Raiders. I think like 9th in the Conference USA era, but 11th all-time. Herd has 6 wins to the Blue Raiders 4, including last year a dub 42-14. The last time they won in Murfreesboro, though, was 2017. Murfreesboro, I don't know what it is about that place that gives Marshall fits. I don't know what it is. Playing on the road at Charlotte and playing on the road at Middle Tennessee is just like they can't figure it out. MTSU, though, they're not very good. They're kind of in an upheaval. They had a grad transfer quarterback come in from NC State. He's gone. he hit the portal last week. He's like, nah, I'm out, Chief. This is not it. This is not the move. I'm gone. Their only win this season is a week 1 win over Monmouth. And the Raiders are already 0-2 in Conference USA play, lost to UTSA, and then they just lost in a shootout to Charlotte. Like I mentioned before, the Herd has trouble in Murfreesboro. They're 1-3 all time in Murfreesboro. But here's where it gets fun. I always like doing this because this is a stat that shoots out every time the Blue Raiders and the Herd lock horns. Whenever Marshall wins the game, it's generally a blowout. When Middle Tennessee wins the game, it's generally really close. So I did the historic score of whenever Marshall wins and whenever Middle Tennessee State wins. Average score, Trace, of when Marshall wins the game. The Herd generally wins 42.5 to 16.7. Pretty convincing. When Middle Tennessee wins, it's 34 to 27.5. So if it's a tight game, it tends to favor the Raiders. So anyway, what do you think about this game, this conference opener for the Herd on the road in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, against a probably not very good Middle Tennessee State team?
Well, this is the Middle Tennessee that's been the case. That this is what they have been for a while now. They are who they are. I mean, they just aren't, they haven't been up to par since, the last time they were truly good was, I think, 2018. I think they played for the conference title that year. Backed into it, lost because they had 12 men on the field or something like that. So, that was, but before that, they were a perennial 6 to 7 win, maybe 8 win team every year, essentially. Now they're not even that. Now they're more like a 4-ish win team a year kind of thing. And, they're just not, they're not much. I mean, not to say that they're bad per se, but they're just not much. But I'll say this much. That Murfreesboro is Marshall's house of horrors, just like Peden Stadium is in Athens, Ohio. Same thing. And I even elaborated on that the Murfreesboro woes a little bit. So outside of the 1-3 record, so this is just dating back to when Middle Tennessee joined the conference. And
so 2013.
Yes, 2013 on every time they played Murfreesboro. So it's 4 games. Marshall has combined for 7 turnovers, 30 penalties, 5 missed field goals in freaking 4 games in Murfreesboro. And 5 missed field goals were in the 1 game.
You took my stat, wasn't I? I was going to say, wasn't all 5 of those? Daggone it.
I knew where you were going with it. So
Marshall used 3 kickers in that game, if I'm not mistaken.
It was at least 2, might have been 3. Yeah. Just abysmal. And I just don't understand. I mean, the only game they've ever played good there was 2017. Now they beat them really good that year, played really well. But good God, boy, what in the heck are they doing in Murfreesboro? 2019, last time they were there, they had 4 turnovers. I mean, what are you doing? Middle Tennessee's not even close to your, talent level at the current time. you got to do more than that. So hopefully they can get past that. I mean, it should be a win for Marshall, especially after 2 straight losses. They should really want to come out here and just punch them right in the mouth, and they should want to absolutely just romp them. And I hope they can do it. I mean, it's hard to get too picky, especially when you're going on the road playing a team or playing in a venue that you always seem to struggle in. Just though any win's good, but like it should be a convincing win.
Has to be. It should be. It has to be. Okay, the train has to get righted like right now. This is a Conference USA East Division game. You can't go in like him hauling around, because Middle Tennessee State has proven that if you let them hang around, they'll beat you. Yeah. They've beaten Marshall by being able to hang around. And for whatever extenuating circumstances have happened over the years, a couple of years ago or way back when it was like 51-49, Marshall's first trip in Murfreesboro, that might have been 2013. I'm not sure. Yeah. That was the game where Middle Tennessee ran like 25 straight run plays or something like that, and Marshall couldn't get them off the field. And then they ended up winning on a last-second pass to the end zone, and that was it. And then you have the game where they go down and a young Chase Litton brings them all the way back to go to overtime, only to miss like 5 field goals, like you said. So in the game. So then you have the game where the week before Isaiah Green goes down and Alex Thompson has to play and hadn't played in a year and a half. And then they ended up beating Marshall in Huntington, and that's ultimately what keeps the Herd out of a Conference USA title game at the season's end. So it doesn't matter what the circumstance is. You cannot let this team hang around. You give them signs of life, they're going to take it, because they know that wins are fleeting in the current state of their program. They got to get them where they can, and if they smell a little blood on one, they're going to fight for it till the bitter end. Now, they're not going to lay down and let you just beat the snot out of them. I mean, they have pride. They're not everybody's homecoming game, but you cannot play down to this competition. You have to play Herd football. You have to score points. You have to swarm on defense. You have to do that. You have a point to prove now. So let's talk about some numbers. Generally we just give you the season numbers, like points per game and stuff like that. But I went a step further here because, of what's been trending for the Herd. So, points per game and points against, I'll give you the season averages. And then I went ahead a step further and did it for just the last 2 games, because that's a little bit more of a telling story for both of these teams. Points per game, Marshall's averaging 40 points on the season, but over its last 2 games, it's only averaging 34. Middle Tennessee State is averaging 29 points per game on the season, but they also are down a little bit over the last 2 games, averaging 26 points on offense. Points against, Marshall is averaging 22.5 points allowed on the season, but over the past 2 games, they've allowed 35 points a game. So that's a little upside down, scoring 34, giving up 35. Middle Tennessee State is allowing 29.5 points per game on the season, but over the last 2 games, they're allowing 34.5 points per game. So they're scoring less and giving up more the past 2 games. Both of these teams are. Yardage-wise, I didn't break it down the last 2 games. That would just taken too much time for me. Marshall's gaining about 550 yards on offense and allowing 420-ish on defense, whereas the Blue Raiders are gaining about 348 yards and giving up 417. So Marshall vastly outpaces what Middle Tennessee does on offense, and they're both allowing about the same on defense. That's got to be edge Herd. It's got to be. So let's talk about some players, Trace. This Middle Tennessee State offense, I didn't break it down like I should have as far as running and passing, but just let me tell you that this Middle Tennessee State team is vastly heavier in the pass than they are in the run. They're only averaging like 75 yards a game on the ground. But quarterback, number 16, Chase Cunningham, taking over, I guess, just in this last game or the past couple games after the transfer decided to hit the portal again. Chase Cunningham, 5'11", 188-pound junior, 47 of 70 on the season, 638 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. How about that? Only been sacked 4 times as well. So, he's doing a good job. But 5'11", 188, you got to be mobile because I know the throwing lanes aren't going to be that clear over top of some 6'5" linemen and so forth. Number 34, running back Amir Rasul, 5'10", 198-pound senior. 35 attempts on the year, 92 yards, 2.6 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. We're going to talk about a trio of wide receivers here. Number 6, wide receiver Jimmy, aptly named Marshall. Jimmy Marshall, 6'5", 229-pound senior, 17 receptions, 250 yards, leads the team in yardage, 2 touchdowns, 14.7 yards per catch. Number 9, wide receiver Jaron Pierce, been there forever, 5'11", 195-pound senior, 19 catches, leads the team for the Raiders, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns as well, 9.7 yards per catch. And number 83, wide receiver Jalen Lane, 5'8", 174-pound freshman, 12 catches, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns as well, 8 yards per catch. 8-yard average. They got like 5 guys on this team with two touchdown receptions. And 8 averaging. I read the wrong line. 12 catches, 165 yards, 13.8 yards per catch. They have 8 wide receivers averaging at least 11 yards per catch on this roster. 5 with at least 2 touchdowns, but yet no runner even has 100 yards rushing on the season. Not in a game, not a game, not a game, the season. Nobody on this roster has 100 yards rushing on the season. We're 4 games in. That tells you that they don't run the ball very well. Defensively, Trace, number 12, safety, Reed Blankenship. Everybody knows Reed Blankenship at this point. 6'1", 204-pound senior, 39 tackles, 21 solo, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble for Blankenship. Number 1, safety, Greg Great Jr., 5'11", 197-pound junior, 31 tackles, 20 solo, 1 forced fumble. And number 19, safety, Teldrick Ross, 5'10", 193-pound sophomore, 27 tackles, 21 solo, 4 passes defended, 1 interception that went for a touchdown, and a fumble recovery. Lastly, number 20, linebacker. You finally get to move up a level. DQ Thomas, 6'2", 216-pound senior, 24 tackles, 15 solo, and 1 sack. When your safeties are your top 3 tacklers, that does not bode well for your defense. Impact plays, Trace, for this Middle Tennessee State defense. 6 sacks as a team, 3 interceptions. They do a great job of getting to the ball, something that Marshall should be worried about a little bit. 6 forced fumbles and 5 fumble recoveries. We know Marshall coughs the ball up a little bit more than people are wanting to see. So maybe a game within a game to pay attention to. So look, Trace, what do you think this Herd defense is going to have to do now that we know Middle Tennessee State is pass heavy? They've got a new-ish quarterback, but the dude has 8 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and he's only been sacked 4 times. What's this defense going to do?
Well, they either have to start actually turning their heads in coverage, or they have to get to the quarterback and get him down a few times. Because if you only get 1 sack, against this team like he did against App State, he's going to have all day, or not all day, but he's going to have a lot of time to throw the football. And that's where Marshall has lost many games over the years. Is they just struggle at times defending the pass. And I don't know how good Middle Tennessee actually is at it, because I know they played Virginia Tech and they played a couple conference games or whatever. But like that's 8 touchdowns and no picks is nothing to sneeze at. It's not. I don't think the guy's exactly Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or anything, but I think he's more than capable of making plays. And that's something Marshall's really got to work on. They have to. I think if Marshall can get back to their old self as far as sacks and quarterback hurries and all that type of thing goes, I think that will be a big thing going in Marshall's favor in this game. I think Middle Tennessee will struggle if Marshall can get to the quarterback, but they need to do that. And like I said, God forbid, just turn your head a couple times. That would be great.
Well, let me give you just a little bit of reference. Take Charlotte for what Charlotte is in comparisons to Marshall's defense, but this was just last week. Charlotte was only able to get 1 sack as a team against Middle Tennessee State. They did rack up 8 quarterback hurries, but they only got 2 tackles for loss as well. So take that for what it's worth. I hope that Marshall rushes the passer a lot better than Charlotte, like exponentially better than Charlotte. But just take that for what it's worth. They did a good job of keeping those Charlotte defenders off of their quarterback. They just did. Now, as far as when we're talking about the Herd on offense, now I just told you that their top 3 tacklers are safeties. And they don't do a fabulous job of getting to the quarterback either. 6 sacks through 4 games. That's not gonna cause a lot of disruption, especially when we talk about a herd defense that runs tempo and a lot of quick passes and all that good stuff. And if your safeties are busy up making tackles, well, maybe somebody's open on the back end. We'll see. But what do you think this herd defense is going to do? Do you think we see a little bit more of an evolution of this offensive machine? Or is it going to just be, this is what we're going to do, we're not deviating from it? Ali's going to get 15 carries, and that's basically it. Grant Wells is going to throw the ball 40 times, and that's basically it. And we'll just see where we're at once the dust settles. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the situation. I mean, to an extent, I mean, we know they're going to come out and throw the ball, and then we know they're going to run a lot of tempo, and Ali's going to get his carries. But like, I wouldn't expect. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully, he has a huge game and just gets a lot of carries. So I'd like to see a 20 plus 25 carry game for $150 or more. If doable, yeah, that'd be great. But I mean, it really doesn't matter per se. They just have to do what works. And if you're in the driver's seat in the fourth quarter, you got to slow it down a little bit. I mean, I think they need to have situationally a better functioning and better offensive, game plan. That's what I'd like to see. But as far as whether they're going to run the ball or pass the ball, I wouldn't expect trouble in either department. It just depends on when they do it. That's really what it comes down to, and for me.
Just for reference, we saw Rasheen Ali get 24 carries against East Carolina. Granted, it was a loss. But what happened in those 24 carries? He ran for 179 yards and averaged almost 8 yards a carry.
Exactly.
I mean, that tells you that the kid can go be productive at 15 carries or 25 carries. He's going to be productive. He has the complete ability to rip off 200 yards a game for you if you want to commit to letting him do that. And you talking about slowing it down a little bit in the fourth quarter if you need to, and eating up some game clock. I still will bang the drum. You can run your offense because it's not like he's going to get held for 1 yard a carry every time in the fourth quarter.
Right.
The offensive line's too good. The running backs are too good. And if they start to key on Ali or Evans or McDaniel, whoever's in there, hey, guess who will just keep the ball and go around the edge? Old Wheels Wells will move the chains for you. So there's no real reason to, keep running tempo through the air. You can run fast tempo and use it on the ground and keep the ball moving and keep the clock running, and you can do that. So here's what I need to know from you specifically. What does the herd got to do to get a win in Murfreesboro, a place that they've traditionally struggled? They've won some games. Well, a game.
One.
Looking at 2, hopefully. But what does the herd got to do to get a win this weekend?
Well, first thing I wrote down is you got to win the fourth quarter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're up by 20 or if it's like a 1-score game. You got to win the fourth quarter. You just have to. You can't put up another goose egg in the fourth quarter. You can't let a team go for 14 or 21 straight on you. It cannot happen. They have to win the fourth quarter. Even if it's 3-0 or 7-3 or whatever, you have to win the fourth quarter. I mean, that's a bad trend that cannot continue if Marshall wants to reach the goals they want to reach. I mean, it has to start. It has to start somewhere. 2 straight games of it is unacceptable. It's got to start now. So win the fourth quarter. Next point is you got to keep the defense off the field more. I mean, we've been beating that drum. The defense has been out there a lot. They're put in some unfortunate situations from time to time. The offense might go to offense. The tempo might lead to a quick touchdown or a quick punt. But either way, the defense is out there, more than they should be. So you got to give the defense more rest. I mean, you got to help with that time of possession. You got to because if they're out there 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and we've seen that this year, that's just too long. They're gassed. When they're out there 90 plays a game or maybe even more than 90 plays a game, that's just too much. So you have to help the defense out and keep them fresh-legged. keep him off the field as much as you can. Next point is I want to see Rasheen Ali established. I mean, he is an absolute stud, no doubt about it. Everybody says he's got big potential. You got to establish Ali. I'd like to see, 20 to 25 carries if the situation calls for it. That would be great. I want to see him, and that will help the offense in the fourth quarter. I think if you give Ali the ball more, if it needs to be done like that. But I want to see Ali established. I think he can run all over this team. The last point is get to the quarterback. I mean, Middle Tennessee is going to try to throw the ball. We know they're going to air it out. That's all they've really been able to do this year. So if Marshall can get to the quarterback, get him down 3, 4, 5 times, that's going to really put a wrinkle in what they want to do. So if they can't throw the ball effectively, then Marshall should really shut them down. So they need to get to the quarterback, get in his face, and make life difficult. So that's my last point on that one.
Yeah, your last point is my first point. What I wrote is get the pressure back. And what I mean by that, obviously, is pressure on the quarterback. Let's get these guys cut loose. There are a lot of really, really good, aggressive pass rushers that Marshall has, both on the defensive line and in the linebacking core. And they got to just cut loose, man. There were points in the last 2 games when a particular defender offensive lineman had no answer for him. And you have to be Johnny on the spot to recognize that mismatch, and maybe you run a blitz right behind that particular defensive lineman, because his man can't handle him. He damn sure ain't going to be able to handle a man right on his heels bursting through there. So you got to get the pressure back. I think it all starts there. If he can get a lick on this Cunningham kid and start to make him realize what it means to hit the turf on a fairly regular basis, or at least get hit on a fairly regular basis, I think you might see the ball come out a little bit quicker. You start hearing those footsteps. Marshall's proven a little bit better this year than other years that they can actually nab an interception instead of just, knocking a ball away. So create those opportunities, create your own success, make your own luck to a point, Number 2 for me is, again, I can't believe I'm saying this. Stop putting the big time emphasis on completing passes to Corey Gamage and Talik Keaton only, because there's so many other guys that have been stepping up. They've become such a focal point for defenses that they've been nullified to a certain extent. And they still have the ability to break a game open. Now, you're not going to throw the ball to let me say that again. You're not going to not throw the ball to them if they're wide open, but don't force it to them when there's somebody else that can maybe make a better play for you just because you're used to throwing it to them. They're still wildly valuable in this offense, but they need to be able to get some focus taken off of them by both the young quarterback and defensive coordinator so that they can again be lethal to a greater extent moving forward. Number 3, how about some better situational play calling, Trace? If we're going to go for it on 4th and you're going to go in 4 down territory, how about we not chuck that 3rd and 8 40 yards down the field? Let's try to pick up 8, or 6, maybe not 40. Just here and there, better situational things. Put yourself in a better position to succeed and control the clock a little bit more and keep that defense on the side of on the sideline. Last but not least, focus on the ball security. I just talked about how this Middle Tennessee State defense does a great job of forcing fumbles. They've got 6 of them on the year, and 5 of them they've recovered. Marshall has coughed the ball up in every game. They have recovered the fumble sometimes, but the ball has come out in every game. Somebody has fumbled in every game. And if that happens, well, guess what that allows Middle Tennessee State to do? Hang around. And you can't have them hanging around. All that said, who's your 200 proof player this week?
I'm rolling with Rasheen Ali. I wanted to see, I think he's more than capable. I know he had a huge rushing output against East Carolina, but I think this could be higher potentially. It could be, even if it's not higher as high, I think he could absolutely have a field day in this game. He's just such a great player, versatile. The guy had a kick return for a touchdown last game. He can run the ball like nobody's business. He's just a great player, great young rising star. So I'd like to see him really be the focal point of the offense. If it's working, if if it makes sense, and if that's how if the flow of the game's going, I'd like to see him be the focal point of the offense. And I know that's they're mainly the focal point has been the passing game, Corey Gamage, like you've been saying, all that kind of, and that's all true. But I really want to see Ali have a monster game here, and I think he's more than capable of doing it. I don't think Middle Tennessee is going to really be able to. I'd be shocked if they can shut him down. But I think Rasheen Ali is my guy this week.
Well, he's my guy too, and for a lot of the reasons you just said. But moreover, because the top 3 tacklers for Middle Tennessee are safeties. Okay, so that's telling me they're not getting a lot of push on the defensive line. They're not getting a lot of output from the linebackers. It's all coming from the back end. So if they start to creep up, well, guess what, dude? You're going to see some wide receivers streaking down the sidelines. You're going to see Xavier Gaines ripping the seams apart for big gains. And then they're going to start to step back again. And guess what that means? Ali can do more damage. So it's got to start with him. I don't know that if the situation calls for it. I think that's the situation you have to create. I think he has to be the focal point. He has to be the reason that, everything else works. And oh, by the way, he's really damn good and can also rip off 2 bills for you. He can find the end zone 4 times for you. He's done it. So he's my guy too. Score prediction time. What do you got for the Herd and the Raiders?
Yeah, I said Marshall gets the win here. I said 35-20. I think Marshall's a better team than 15 points better than Middle Tennessee, but it's just something about Murfreesboro and playing at Middle Tennessee. I just lose all confidence when it comes to stuff like this. So, I mean, if it could be like 2017 where they beat them, I think it was 38-10, that would be awesome. I would love to see, a blowout like that. But like this Middle Tennessee team does some things well, and they do some things well that Marshall struggles against. Like you said, forcing fumbles. Marshall's put the ball on the turf a lot. Throwing the ball, they seem like they've done a pretty good job of that. Marshall has trouble defending the pass a lot. So like they have enough things that they do well to where they can have some success in this game. But I just flat out do not believe they're anywhere near the team Marshall is overall. Marshall's got just a better football team, point blank. If they just don't beat themselves like they tend to always do in Murfreesboro, if they just can avoid that, then I think they'll have no problems in this game, even with the advantages that Middle Tennessee might have. So I'm going to say 35-20.
I say 40-21, and I feel like we'll either see a special team score or a defensive score in this game. I think the pressure on the quarterback is paramount. That's what's going to be the difference maker for the Herd, because obviously it's Middle Tennessee's bread and butter. Passing is their bread and butter. They can't run a lick. They're averaging 75 yards a game, and Marshall eats running backs for a living. That's just what they do. Even though they gave up a ton of rushing yards to Appalachian State, they did a great job of bottling up Cameron Peoples. But like you said, it was Noel late in the game that was torching them. And there's just, I mean, you're talking about a team that doesn't have a 100-yard rusher on the season yet. I mean, they have to pass. So you get any semblance of quarterback hurries, moving him off the spot type stuff that Steven likes to say. You come out of this game with 5 or 6 sacks or something like that. This could get ugly. It could get ugly for Marshall. I mean, in a good way. They might end up with a couple of interceptions. They might get a sack fumble or, a scoop and score or something like that. So 40-21 to me, it feels light. I feel like I could see more than that, but I'm erring on the side of caution because Marshall's fallen off a little bit through the air on defense. And like you said, they have a tendency to cough the ball up, in a very inopportune moment. They could be moving the ball and poof, there comes the ball. So 40-21, give it to me. What do you got? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a must-win game in my opinion. I mean, you can't afford to go 2-3 here. I mean, with 3 straight losses, that would be bad. I mean, that wouldn't end their chances to win the division, but it would sure hurt. I mean, you can't afford to drop a game to a team that's just not very good. I mean, if you're going to lose a game in conference, it better be in November to a really good team like we've talked about. It better be, it can't be to Middle Tennessee or
Nope.
FIU or Charlotte or whoever. It can't be to these average or worse than average teams. You can't play down to their level. You got to get the wins here, because we've seen that in years past where one bad game against a Middle Tennessee or a Charlotte or a this or a that keeps Marshall from playing for a championship. That's what it's done. Marshall has proven they can beat anybody in the conference. I mean, 2019, they beat the best teams in the conference, and then they turn around and lose to Middle Tennessee and Charlotte. I mean, you can't have that. You cannot play down to your competition. You can't beat yourselves. So they need to take care of business here, especially with the 2-game losing streak. They got to get back on the right track, especially with conference play starting. So got to get this win here. Got to play Marshall football. Got to do what you do best. And they haven't been doing that in the last couple games at times, and unfortunately it's cost them. So Marshall should be 4-0 easily, no doubt should be 4-0, but they aren't. They're 2-2. So that's the reality. They have to get better. They have to finish games better, play better in the fourth quarter. So that's where it is right now.
Well, the bottom line is they're all must win up until mid-November. You're going to be favored in every game. Middle Tennessee State, then you got Old Dominion. You go out to North Texas, who doesn't look like they're very good. So that's an excellent opportunity to get that fairly elusive win in the state of Texas. And then you got Florida International before you get into November. Florida Atlantic's a game you're going to have to win. And then you got 75 week against UAB. They're all must win up until after 75 week. You have to win those, all of them, especially the games you're favored in, and especially this one because it's a conference game. A loss to a bad team, you might as well take it out because that means somebody else is going to have to lose too in the East. Because if you beat Florida Atlantic or Western Kentucky and that's their only loss and you've got 2, then it ain't gonna do you no good. You're going to have to hope somebody else does it. So just win. Just win. If you're supposed to be a favorite in the East, then you have to play like a favorite in the East. Now, that being said, all the goals except for basically a 10-win season, actually a 10-win season still on the table too. With a bowl win or a Conference USA title win or whatever, it's still on the table. But right now, all the goals are still there. You can get to 10 wins. You can get to the Conference USA title game. You can win a conference title. You can play in a big bowl game, and you can win that. But if you start to trip up against bad teams now, that stuff's going to fly out the window quick.
Yep.
So this is where you get it right. Marshall's got a great opportunity here to go on a 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4-game win streak. You talk about Middle Tennessee State, Old Dominion, North Texas, and Florida International. You got a great opportunity to win for a month, and that's what you need to do. Then you come up for that last month of the season, and you see where you're going to be. All right, what are we going to do? We got Florida Atlantic, we got UAB, we got Charlotte, and we close out a Moonshine Throwdown Western Kentucky in Huntington. So this middle third of the season has to be undefeated. But I think they can do it. Will they do it? I guess we'll find out starting Saturday. Let's get the heck out of here if you don't have anything else. This was a one long episode, hour and a half. Holy crap.
Go Herds.
Go Tops. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. We'll be back, me and Steve, with your Indiana recap and looking forward to Michigan State later this week. Later.